need to get to the bottom of this. Why is that a Clark Wolf question?
Because you and I both love My Best Friend's Wedding. Do we not?
No.
Oh. Apparently, I overstepped my bounds on that one, but I love My Best Friend's Wedding.
It's 97, right?
Yep.
Here we go. All right. I assumed, and I should not have, guys.
Never saw that movie.
Lesson learned. All right.
Is Sandra Bullock in it?
No.
Then I don't care.
Okay.
Welcome to the 89th take of Schmoeville 33, the official after show of everything Schmoes Know and Collider Video. I am your host, Ryan Snelling.
And I'm Brian Davids, and here's the thing about saying here's the thing 100 times in an episode. It's neither here nor thing.
Is there something that I say a lot? Like, do I have a trademark saying that just consistently gets on your nerves and I need to stop saying?
Everything.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Brian, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad everybody's listening to us this week. I had a lot of fun engaging with the fans yet again. I have to be honest, though, I'm going into this episode feeling more disconnected from Collider Video than I have in recent memory. I mean, all the distraction from the election on Tuesday and Wednesday and the fact that we didn't have any shows Friday. I wasn't feeling so great today, so hopefully that doesn't bleed through into the show, but it sucks, and I've missed watching Collider consistently this week, so I apologize for that.
Are you asking me to carry you this episode?
Here we go. I'm not asking you to, but I'm it's a possibility that you might have to carry me, that's for sure.
I mean, it's par for the course, if you ask me.
Yeah, thank you very much. With that being said, are you ready to just get into it? We start out with the housekeeping episode. What do you have for us this week?
I just want to thank everyone for their supportive messages in regards to the Schmoeville Summit that we had with Leanne of the Schmoeville Facebook group. I got a bunch of positive messages from members of the Facebook group, some of which included screenshots to some new posts that were really meant to rally support for us. So I really appreciate that. I even got some messages from newer Facebook group members who admitted that they were hard on the show in the past because they didn't realize that the Schmoeville Facebook group was not the only extension of Schmoeville. So they apologized and said they'd stop placing unfair expectations on our show. And they now realize, though, that we're both extensions of Schmoeville. So all in all, I think it was a healthy and productive thing to have that conversation. I'm glad we did it. I'm sure it was frustrating for some of our listeners to have to hear the back and forth, but it was really a healthy thing for us as a summit, if you will.
Yeah, I think so too. I can definitely see that. I mean, the comments were certainly interesting, but having been through it, I think me and you and Leanne and even the Facebook group in general are just better off after that conversation. Did I ever send you screenshots of the Facebook comments about that episode?
No, not about our summit episode. I've kind of steered clear of the comments this past week just because I get kind of too wrapped up in them, and I'm trying to keep my sanity this week because I knew it would be a crazy week already, which it was. So I kind of steered clear this week, and I just let my DMs kind of influence my thoughts on things because I get a lot of DMs since I don't require people to be followers of mine to DM me. So that's how I get stuff sent to me all the time.
Is that a shot at me because you have to follow, or I have to follow you to DM me?
No, not necessarily. I'm just saying, like, people send me stuff all the time, and it's like, you sent me stuff in the past, as you admitted to Leanne, but there are probably half a dozen people who send me stuff on a regular basis. Sometimes it's people that just come out of the woodwork, and in this case, it was the most positive it's ever been. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, the only reason why I asked you that again is because I admitted that I am someone who sends you stuff, but obviously, I mean, I don't feel bad for it because I'm your co-host and we tell each other things. But so I am one person out of the other, people that send you that kind of stuff. But the only reason I asked you that is I didn't want to be a hypocrite and then send you negative things that were said about our show, about the show, where we speak on the negative things that are spoken about our show, if that makes sense. So, yeah. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, and people don't seem to understand that I only mentioned 2 examples, actually 3 examples on that summit show. I had probably 5 others at least that I could have mentioned, but the point was made through the examples that I provided. So I'm just glad that the rhetoric seems to be changing, even if it's bit by bit this week.
So what's the update on you joining Facebook officially?
That is at the top of my list this weekend. It was a crazy week because of the election and work and whatnot. So that was the first thing on my agenda this weekend. So by Monday, I will be participating or lurking initially as to what's going on in that group. So that is the update.
Cool. It'll be nice to have you over there, Brian. I'm sure everybody will make you feel welcome, and this will be just something we laugh at a few weeks down the road.
I hope so. But we also got to confirm something from last week, as the dead air that's placed at the end of the Schmoedown episodes. I said it was intentional. You tried to say it was some Adobe mumbo jumbo. And of course, Graham Butler, as well as others, confirmed that I was right, because people were guessing if it was a knockout based on the short episode runtimes. So that was very much intentional. So score 1 for Brian and 0 for Snelling. Snelling, please send me an edible arrangement to my office next week. Heavy on the pineapple.
Oh, I will show you Adobe Mumbo Jumbo. Everyone just look out for the very end of this podcast in the YouTube format. I will show you Adobe Mumbo Jumbo.
It's true. All of it.
Let's talk about the Muga controversy that happened on Monday, I believe. I think it was Monday night or early Tuesday. I'll let you set this up just because it kind of started with you on Twitter, but it's eventually just going to get to a point that I have and that I'm really not that happy about right now, but go.
So the 1 week that I'm easiest on Muga, the same week where you praised him left and right, he threw us under the bus and name-called us. Something I'm very particular about not doing. I constantly say I'll dance in front of the line, but I won't cross into the petty name-calling, personal lives, appearance, politics, beliefs, etc. So here's what happened. Sasha was not on TV Talk this week. I tweeted her after the show. She tweeted something back to me. And people saw this exchange, and it was nothing to do with what ended up being conceived or perceived and then spread to Josh. So here is what Josh said on Twitter. Sasha Pearl Raver is not leaving Collider TV Talk. We sometimes have other hosts. Sub in, that's all. She'll be back next week. Then he followed that up in reply to someone else. Don't listen to rumors, and don't listen to the numbskulls running the podcast. So once again, I tweeted something to Sasha. She wasn't on TV Talk. She replied to me. People saw the tweet, which was really just meant for me. That's why she deleted it rather quickly. But people still saw it and ran with it while turning it into something it wasn't. It was never her saying, I'm going to leave Collider TV Talk. And there was never any implication of that either. But by the time it hit the Schmoeville Facebook group and then went back to Josh, it became, is Sasha leaving Collider TV Talk? So this is an example of how one tweet can become something else entirely and be blown out of proportion. So Muga saw that someone referenced Schmoeville in response to one of his tweets. He lumped us in with Schmoeville Facebook group, and that's where he threw us under the bus. So I'm not happy about it. You're not happy about it. What are your thoughts?
This is not intended to be this overly critical nitpicking that we've done previously on Muga. It's not the case. I'm extremely disappointed in him because, like you said, he threw us under the bus after numerous attempts to reach out to him and like clear the air. Because ever since, I don't know, a few weeks ago when we had that big thing, I've tried to reach out to him multiple times to try to alleviate our relations. And he just simply has not responded. So I don't know if that means he doesn't actually think it's that big of a deal or he just doesn't care to speak to us. But I just really find it disappointing that he would say that when we literally had nothing to do with that rumor. And the fact that he didn't take the time to look into it. I mean, saw the screenshot. There's no mistaking it. Like, it's clearly just not our fault that happened. Look, and I'll even end this by defending Muga and asking the people out there in Schmoeville that if you're continuing this rumor or still worried about this rumor, just relax. We have confirmation that it's not true. Nothing's going on. But Muga saying that, and then I even responded to him. I told him to just chill the hell out on Twitter about us. And again, he did not respond. Sasha did and just asked us to not fight, which is fair. But it just, the fact he has no desire to speak to us, but he is speaking indirectly up is pretty disappointing to me, and I want to stop, especially if you're going to take the time to respond to me directly. So,
yeah, like you, I tweeted Muga right after I saw all that, and Sasha liked my tweet, which basically verifies, if anyone knows Twitter, when someone likes your tweet, they're basically agreeing with you, or they're taking your side in certain scenarios. So Sasha liking it should have clued him in that we weren't to blame for this. And yet he never followed up and said, oh, sorry, I jumped to conclusions. He just blew us off. So I now understand why a 35-year-old man had a Happy Gilmore poster on his wall, or why he considers himself a big couch banger, because that's Josh Muga, everybody.
Yeah. It's really disappointing. There's not much else I can say about it. It's just dumb.
Yeah, the channel reached 303,000 subscribers. So our first episode with Jeremy as a full-timer had Jeremy, Ken, Ellis, and Campea. Campea kicked it off with a rather lame Monday Night Football joke. John loves the sports jokes, of course, but I was really disappointed that this panel did not watch Mr. Robot, not a single person. That was one of my early observations. They again referenced that they're changing the start time for Movie Talk to 10 a.m. I still don't remember this from December. I tried to find reference to it, but I don't have Facebook, so I don't have access to those Facebook Live episodes. But
look, I'm not complaining. I mean, either way, just like how it is now, or when it was at my 2 o'clock. I know it's your 11 o'clock, but I watched it live when I could watch it live, and if I couldn't, then I'd watch it later. I mean, it makes no difference to me when it actually starts. I catch it or I don't, no matter what.
Monday was a challenging show, both for the cast and us, because there were so few stories that day. And so it's very difficult for 4 people to have something interesting to say when you're talking about the casting of a supporting role in a not-so-big movie. I mean, they even delved into comic book sales data because they had so little to talk about.
Right.
Kenny even went with the layaway joke in regards to buy or sell. So it was a really strange Monday. It was a really strange first day for Jeremy as a full-timer, but I thought he was in the flow of things. He's done the show enough times by now to know what's up, but a very bizarre first day, all things considered.
And sort of behind-the-scenes stuff that happened on Monday, did you see that Instagram pic where they had the meeting with Mark Fernandez? Your boy was in studio that day?
Well, they did say that there's going to be some changes in the studio. They didn't come out and say specifically what those were, but like you said, there are some photos circulating Instagram and Twitter. I'm not going to say specifically what's going on just because they made a point not to say specifically on the air what's going on. So you can infer on your own. You don't need us to do that. But I think we've got some cool stuff coming for us early next week.
Yeah, and the last time that this sort of happened, I think when they took some time off, I believe this is pure speculation because I don't actually know. They were like modifying the sets or something. Isn't that correct? So it's got to be something along those lines. I mean, that's safe to assume, right?
Yeah, the last time they did this, I think it was right before Phase 6 launched for Schmoes. I think they did some work to their set to have them ready. But based on the pictures that are circulating, I think we've got a very, very good thing coming very soon.
Good. I'm very much looking forward to that as well. And for me to say one more thing about Jeremy, look, Jeremy did what he was brought in for. I mean, he's a great personality. We had obviously seen him for a couple of weeks not too long ago, and he fit right in, it seems. So I think, again, we've said it plenty of times, we only have the sky's the limit over at Collider right now. Personally, I think that Ken steals the show no matter who's on the panel. It's going to be funny to see how they arrange who's going to be on the panel. During the beginning of the week, I was a little concerned that our boy Schnepp quietly left Movie Talk because so many people have been brought in lately. But as we saw, the week went on. That's not the case. But
it was interesting to have 3 comedians on and then Campea on Monday. I mean, do you want to have all your jokey guys on at one time? I'm not saying Kristian's not a jokey guy, but Ellis, Jahns, I'm not saying Jahns, Jeremy, and Ken, that's kind of a comedic trio to have on all at one time. So I wonder if we're going to get a variety of different looks as they experiment, or if it's just a matter of availability for each person who's available that day. So time will tell in that regard. For those scoring at home, they mispronounced Giacchino and Godot on this Monday episode, and Kenny Napzuk made sure to avoid having to say Godot, even though he talked about her. So clearly my rant from last week was still haunting him.
Please don't rant about Godot on this episode.
No.
I think we've had enough. Okay, thank you.
We're good on Godot this week. We got some other stuff, though.
Okay. I very much look forward to that. All right, we got Jeremy aside. Let's talk about some other stuff that went on before we get to the big Thursday.
On Tuesday, Ellis had this very bizarre Chipotle analogy about Deadpool taking its time, just like he wants his Chipotle burrito assistants, burritoistas, to take their time so that the burrito is yummy in his tummy. It was the strangest analogy I've heard in quite some time. So I made sure to note it, just to mention it on here. But John Campea was in a very grumpy mood that day. He had his white and nerdy hoodie on. Very strange mood if you go back and watch this show. I don't know what was going on with him, but he mentioned that he didn't like Arrival. And so every year, for the most part, there is a critically acclaimed movie that is mass critical acclaim. Last year it was Fury Road, and Campea didn't like Fury Road either. He famously liked Tomorrowland more than Fury Road. So It looks like Arrival is his Fury Road of 2016. And I was kind of thinking about this a lot. I don't mean to dwell too much on this, but I've been thinking about Campea's taste, and he's got very childlike sensibilities. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but if you look at what his tastes are, he likes the animation, Disney, Pixar, comic books, fantasy. He prefers the lighter fare, the world-building fare, the stuff that's not too heavy. When you have your Fury Roads, your Sicarios, your Arrivals, that's typically not his favorite. So I thought that was just an interesting observation because I've heard nothing but amazing things about Arrival. I saw it. It was amazing. So I don't even know if you have to react to that, but there it is.
Well, just a small reaction. I think I agree with your overall point that he has those sort of sensibilities, but I think it's funny that Fury Road isn't like... I haven't seen Arrival yet, but my impression of Arrival is Fury Road is not really on the same plane as that. You know what I mean?
I'm just saying in regards to mass critical acclaim, they're very, very different movies, Fury Road and Arrival, but in terms of mass critical acclaim, everybody loving it, everybody praising it, he's the one guy that's kind of like, just like he was kind of the one guy that was just like, Fury Road's okay. And Schnepp used to get crazy when Campea was not as high on Fury Road as him. He would really get fired up in defense of that film, but I just think it's more of a taste thing. He just kind of prefers the lighter fare versus the more serious more serious things. I mean, he likes serious movies, of course, but I just think his preferences usually lie in a more childlike realm.
I'm just disappointed that people are still talking about Chipotle after I went on my thing with Qdoba last week. By the way, someone tweeted at me that they were making fun of the way I pronounced Qdoba and told me that it was garbage. And I'm freaking the hell out because if Qdoba is not how it's pronounced, then I have no idea what life is. And he never got back to me and corrected me on how to say it. So I don't know if he meant to just freak me out, but I might be expecting a Brian Davids mispronunciation segment on Qdoba here in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, you got a lot of backlash for saying it was better than Chipotle, so you never know what people are going to react to on the show.
People just don't like being wrong. That's all it is. So
I want to make a quick note about Wednesday's show. Kristian was sitting in a sinking chair that day, and it just reminded me of Phase 5 of Schmoes Know, as they had the sinking chair on the Trial of JTE episode. Even Chris Stuckman, who's like 7'5", even he looks small in this sinking chair. So once Hal Rudnick sat on this particular chair, he looked like a 7-year-old kid. It's a hilarious episode, the Trial of JTE, for a number of reasons, but the sinking chair on this episode of Movie Talk just kind of was a callback to that moment.
I think it's hilarious how when you're sitting at that table, Ashley V. Robinson and John Schnepp look to be the same, but they could not be. Like, she might be the smallest person in the studio at a time, and he's the largest. But when they're behind that table, it makes absolutely no difference.
That's why I made that point last week about seeing those pictures of everybody at LA Comic-Con, because you start to get a feel for their actual heights. And you don't get that because we see them sitting down all the time. So, perfect example right there.
Let's jump ahead to Thursday with Michael Rapaport, because that's headline news. That was insane to me. And I don't know what your reaction was yet. I can't wait to hear it. But from my perspective, again, Thursday I was very busy. I was at work all day. I had an eye doctor appointment. So I was out and about. And then all of a sudden, around a little after 2:00, I got a message from you and then a message from our friend Luke Jaggers, who's been on the podcast before. And I didn't think anything of it because looking back at the messages, I had no idea that there was any correlation. But you had sent something like, Rapaport is doing this, blah, blah, blah. And so I was, halfway into our conversation. Unfortunately, I'm not always paying attention to you. I'm sorry. But I saw that you mentioned Rapaport, and I just assumed that he was doing something crazy on Instagram or Vine in reaction to the election. And you had said a couple things, but I was at the doctor and I didn't get to really read what you had said at the time. Parallel to that, Luke is texting me saying, "Are you watching this shit?" Talking about Movie Talk. Like, this is going to blow your mind. And that's what triggered me to turn on Movie Talk in the waiting room, and seeing Michael Rapaport on Movie Talk just blew my mind. And I'm gonna need your help because, again, I was disconnected from Collider this week. Were we supposed to know that was coming? Was that announced at all?
Campea tweeted it out on Wednesday night that Rapaport was going to be on the next day, Thursday.
Okay.
And so when I saw this announcement, I did a double take because I know Rapaport really well from Howard Stern, from the Wrap-Up Show, as well as from Bill Simmons' land. He's been on all of Bill Simmons' podcasts and shows for a number of years now, and he's a very electric guy. I mean, he will go off on rants. He will drop F-bombs. There is no filter on Rapaport these days. So I thought it was a very off-brand choice to have him on as a guest on Movie Talk, considering I knew that he was not into the Collider brand movies. He's not into comic book movies. He's not into genre stuff. So I was very surprised that they made this choice. And I wasn't at all surprised that the events that eventually ensued. I'm not at all surprised that that's what happened because I've seen this so many times. And what's interesting is when they first introduced him, he was a bit subdued at first. Mm-hmm. And then it came back to him, and that's when the floodgates opened. When the floodgates opened. Natasha read this big long deposition as Rapaport put it. So even he was annoyed by the long quotes that we've been subjected to lately, which I wish they would paraphrase as we've discussed before. But that just opened the floodgates, and Rapaport went crazy. Basically, he questioned Schnepp's entire existence, and Schnepp was throwing jabs back at him. This was an amazing episode of Movie Talk.
Look, again, I saw a clip of it. before I had my appointment, and so I didn't get to watch the full episode. And I'm sitting there thinking, I saw the opening portion where he started yelling, and Kristian was like looking off camera, and Jeremy was making faces, and my reaction.
Campea looked like he had a bad lunch. Like his stomach just turned bright red. Like Campea looked sick to his stomach.
So again, before I watched the episode, my reaction to that was, why didn't they expect that? If they knew that they were going to have this guy who a lot of us are familiar with come on and be who he is, I mean, that should be something that you want. So when I saw the small portion that I saw, I was really disappointed, and my reaction was, I really hope that they just go with it. Like, that's the best thing that they could have done, because they already ruined the YouTube policy when it comes to cursing for that video. But I'm sure everyone, especially someone like Kristian, knows that people are going to go nuts over this. I was praying to God that they actually were able to just go with it and run with it and let it be what it was. That would have been the best thing. And then, of course, I got back to the episode later on, and I feel like that happened. Like, I feel like they did the best they could. I feel like they sort of lightened up and let Rapaport do his own thing. And
yeah,
I think that's all you could do. So I'm really glad that they weren't sour grapes about the whole thing. Yeah, seeing him and Schnepp go toe-to-toe a little bit was great. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't see the Twitter announcement with Campea, so this came as total shock to me. But I had a lot of fun with it. It was hysterical, and I think at the end of the episode, they were pretty happy with it as well. But we'll see if there's ever a future episode of Movie Talk featuring Rapaport.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think they realized exactly what Rapaport could be like. I mean, Kristian admitted recently he's not current on Howard Stern. I don't know if they're familiar with Rapaport's work on Simmons' podcasts and shows, but this was basically Fernandez's idea. Like, Fernandez and Rapaport are bros. Like, he's done work, Rapaport that is, he's done stuff with Complex before. He did a video with Justin Bieber about their NBA All-Star game, celebrity game, battle or feud. So he's not foreign to the Complex universe. So I think Fernandez just said, as a favor, will you come on? So this was all Fernandez's brainchild, I think. I don't think Campea or anybody else had much of a say in it based on the existing relationship that Fernandez has with Rapaport. But this reminded me a lot of Artie Lang, Howard Stern's longtime sidekick, his first appearance on Joe Buck's ill-fated HBO show, where Lang went crazy on Buck's very first episode, and basically got the show canceled. I mean, this turned out a lot better, of course, because like you said, halfway through, everybody just kind of went with the flow. But there was a while there where it was like, what do we do? Do we go with this? Do we say something? I mean, Campea called a few audibles. He skipped mailbag, which was a great decision because Rapaport would not have been able to sit through those long emails that even I complain about. But entertaining nonetheless. Did you notice Kristian brought out his New York accent a bit more than usual, since Rapaport is from New York as well?
No, I didn't, but I'm glad that you brought that up, because if there was anyone on that panel that would have appreciated what Rapaport was doing, it was definitely going to be Kristian. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah,
but
he looked like he was having fun. I mean, there was a great moment, though. Schnepp asked Rapaport, "Did you see Pacific Rim?" And Rapaport looks at him slowly and says, "Nah, man." Such a great moment.
It could never happen because Rapaport's a New York guy, but man, if he was consistently on Collider, can you think of how much fun that would be? Just hearing them explain what like upcoming movies are, that was fascinating to me. Like, just to see, he got so worked up when they were explaining certain movies. That was just a lot of fun to listen to him, even though it wasn't a classic episode of Movie Talk.
I thought it was. I think it's going to become a classic episode just because of the
format wise. Sorry.
Right. Here's what's interesting. I'm not a fan of Rapaport in the acting realm. I really like him in general, but I used to joke on my other podcast that if you want a show canceled, just call Michael Rapaport, because he's got a list a mile long of shows that he basically was on and that were then canceled. I mean, Justified, their worst season, he was on as the villain that season. Then they were given a final season the year after that. So I love the guy in terms of his personality, but I'd rather steer clear of him acting-wise. But this just proves what a great guest he'd be on the Schmoes Know live show. Kristian said he was already talking to him about it. He's willing to do it. So hopefully we can make that happen, because he is built for the Schmoes Know scene.
That was easily the biggest missed opportunity of the week. The fact that they were going dark after Movie Talk that day, and they had released a pre-taped Schmoes Know Show, which we'll get to in a second. Rapaport could have been there, or they could have pre-taped with him,
right? Like Lexi Alexander.
Exactly. Just a huge. Unfortunately, I know it wasn't intentional, and I'm sure they're kicking themselves for having Rapaport come on during a week where they had to call some audibles in the studio. But man, that's really disappointing. I would have loved to see him on the live show, but I'm assuming that is in the works, like you said. So.
I would love to see him on the Schmoedown in a Scorsese, crime drama type category, very specific category episode. Kristian also expressed interest in doing that.
Thank you to our friend of the show, Chris Woodburn, who got in there the Friends reference and was able to. I was hoping, because I was like, hey, that's the guy from Friends. I was hoping somebody would bring that up there at the table. So thanks, Chris.
He's been on a million shows: Boston Public, Prison Break, Public Morals, Justified.
Yeah.
The list goes on. But he was great in Higher Learning when he was bigger in movies. He was great in Copland. He was looking like the next big kind of character actor for a while, but things didn't go as planned. He kind of ended up doing TV stuff, and now he's known mostly for his personality. So Howard Stern loves him. The Wrap-Up Show loves him. Simmons loves him. So he's added another famous appearance on Collider. So what you want to transition to the Nightmares and Heroes announcement?
Yeah, let's talk about this. So I can't decide if this is significant or not. Like, I feel free. We'll speculate, obviously, but for those of you who don't know, Heroes and Nightmares are switching days. So Heroes is going to go back to its original date of Tuesday, and Nightmares is going to take over for Wednesdays. I think this is just a matter of... Fuck, I forgot my point. God damn it.
Well, let me chime in and say, Schnepp, when they talked about it on Tuesday, when they announced it on Tuesday's Movie Talk, he kind of sounded angry about it. He said in his roundup, his plug roundup, just 'cause it had to happen. And I kept waiting for a laugh to come in or for a smile to pop up on his face, but that didn't happen. I replayed the moment a number of times, but I don't know if Schnepp was happy about this. I know he changed the day because of his schedule previously, but I wonder if this decision was made for him, perhaps to help Nightmares for some reason. Perhaps there's some advanced stat or metric that would help Nightmares being on Wednesdays again. I don't know. Part of me thought maybe they're trying to take advantage of the American Horror Story crowd, but that's not the case because their final episode is next week. I don't know the specific reason, but did you get a sense that Schnepp was angry about this?
Yeah, you told me to watch out for that moment. I think I can see where you're coming from. I think you're reading into it more than I was.
Well, I've seen Schnepp angry before. I know what an angry Schnepp looks like, and this reminded me of an angry Schnepp that I've seen in the past. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I remember my point. Thank God, because I felt stupid. I think this is somehow in correlation to the fact that Movie Talk is just being bumped up. Because if you've noticed the past several weeks, Heroes is actually recorded before Movie Talk.
In the mornings, yeah.
So the fact that Movie Talk is earlier, I don't know if it's because like maybe Robert Meyer Burnett or Schnepp can only be there in the mornings on Wednesdays, that they were able to do that. But that's the only thing I can come up with is that, hey, Movie Talk is bumped up. They can no longer record before it, and Schnepp is only available Tuesday afternoons instead of Wednesday. So maybe it's just that simple.
It's safe to assume that Schnepp is on every Tuesday movie talk since he'll be there for Heroes as well that day.
Yeah.
Was he on Wednesday's movie talk this week?
See, I don't remember. I think he was.
I think so.
Yeah, I think he was too.
So yeah, we don't know the significance of it, but it's interesting nonetheless whenever a change like this happens. Is it meant to help Nightmare's numbers, 30,000 on average per episode? We'll see.
And the fact that Top 10 is no longer on Wednesday, because Top 10 could have been the reason why they were originally recording in the mornings. So the fact that Top 10 is no longer on Wednesdays and yet they still do it, it's got to have something to do with Schnepp's schedule. That's what I'm going with, but we'll see if there's some light shed on that in the future.
Did you get a chance to watch Ashley's crash course for Newt's Commander in this Fantastic Beasts kids movie?
I did, and I'm glad because I'm a fan of Harry Potter. I know that you are not, so I'm actually surprised if you watched it. But I knew literally nothing about this character. Obviously, I haven't seen the movie, and he's not featured in the original Harry Potter movies. I'm assuming that most of the knowledge from him is like inserted in the Harry Potter books, or if it's, I don't know if it's on Pottermore, or like she's released other short stories and stuff. I guess I'm revealing that I'm not as diehard as people might have thought, or as Brian might have thought, but I have no idea where the literature is on this character. So this crash course was absolutely perfect for me, and I thought they did a great job. I know you're not a Harry Potter fan, but there were some things that they did in the video. The Marauders map was featured, and there were cool effects on Ashley, and all of that I loved, being a fan of the movies. How did you react to it?
Thank God it's not Kylo Red, is all I can say. You picking up what I'm putting down? The fact that Eddie Redmayne apparently auditioned for Kylo Ren. Could you imagine having Eddie Redmayne as Kylo Ren?
I'm not a fan of Eddie Redmayne. I know Kristian is. I know people over there probably are. I think all he does is whisper. I'm not the biggest fan of Adam Driver as Kylo Ren, but I will take Adam Driver as Kylo Ren.
Settle down.
Any day.
Driver's fantastic, but Redmayne came on the Schmoes Know live show way back when, so I think there's a little bit of rooting there in that sense. But this video only has about 10,000 views. It's their lowest viewed crash course. And I think that is a great way to measure the excitement level in this new franchise. And they talked about this on this week's pre-taped episode of the Schmoes Know Show, how much they were anticipating this movie or not. And I think this is a good indication that maybe Universal is over...
Warner Brothers.
Is it Warner Brothers? I thought it was Universal. Yeah. Whatever. Maybe the studio is reaching a bit too far on this, because they've already got 5 movies greenlit, directors named them all, it's the same director, but maybe they're reaching or assuming a bit too much as far as people's interest in this world. Yeah,
I mean, that's a great point, and I'm glad that you didn't say that you were worried about Crash Course, because my stance on those type of videos, as long as they make them relevant to the week that they come out, and obviously they've done a pretty good job at that, except with the exception of Deathstroke. I feel like they were late on the Deathstroke thing. I don't want to judge Crash Course based on viewing. Not to say that we did, but it's just a matter of time before one of those goes viral, and I think that's the main goal, and those are going to start picking up, and it's just a matter of time, and it'll sort of be random, and there's no way to know, but that's sort of just my feelings on that. But
it's infotainment, and I like the rest of the way. I really hope they keep doubling down on Star Wars with Rogue One coming out soon. I want them to go all Star Wars the rest of the way, drill down on any topics that will help get people ready for Rogue One even more so. And that way they build up Crash Course even more, and who knows, if something is going to go viral, odds are it might be Star Wars at this very particular time.
Exactly. And I mentioned it, I think it was last week, where Chris Stuckman had that random huge viral hit with the ending of Prometheus Explained. So I think that just hints that it's just a matter of time, and they should just keep doing it for sure. There are channels dedicated like a video a day about something that has come out in Star Wars. So yeah, they should definitely ride the Star Wars train because, as we've seen from Jedi Council, Collider is a huge help to Lucasfilm. And there's no question. I think someone even pointed out, and this is slightly off topic, but just a good point, that after mentioned Jedi, it jumped up on the Amazon pre-order list. So without a doubt, Star Wars or Collider and Star Wars have a great what word do I want? They go good together.
Synergy.
Yes. Thank you very much.
That was
you said.
That was my note. That was my note regarding Jedi Council this week, was that Kristian was continuing to hawk Catalyst, the latest piece of Star Wars canon that he readed. If you watch the episode, you'll know why I said readed. But Ken and Jeremy were on this week, which gives them a deeper bench of council members to pull from as needed. So this really helps out Mark Ellis, Tiffany Smith, and John Campea so they can feel less guilty about missing an episode due to the rigors of stand-up comedy, the corporate mandates of Warner Brothers, or the complex media conference calls. So it's always good to have a deep bench if you're the council.
I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show. What do you think goes on when Campea has to take those phone calls? If it's a company thing, does that go like we talked about previously how Campea, even though he is the host of Movie Talk, is very much in charge of Collider still? Is he still the guy that has to take those conference calls, or is he really just talking to Ann about Hasbro?
You would think they would know his shooting schedule by now, but all I can think of is that because there's some work going on in the studio, maybe they needed his input on something that was happening in relation to the work that is taking place right now. That's all I can think of in this case. Yes, it's happened before. Who knows the reasons why? But maybe it's just Anne. I don't know. But it is kind of strange. it is kind of strange that the corporate bosses would interrupt him at a time when he records at the same time every week for the most part. You think they would want to make sure that he's on his episodes full time instead of interrupting him. I don't know.
There will be a day when I have to leave the Schmoeville podcast temporarily to take a conference call. Just so you know. It won't be today, but I just want to give you the heads up.
Going to keep people guessing. It's going to happen.
That's right. Did you have any more thoughts on the week in Collider before we move to our history lesson?
That's it for me.
All right, what do you got this week? This is a surprise to me. I'm excited.
Well, for this week's Schmoeville history lesson, I thought I'd flash back to the last time the live show followed a presidential election. In doing so, I noticed quite the coincidence in the process. So on November 8th, 2012, the Schmoes Know Movies podcast had its infamous post-election episode that featured the greatest prank in show history as Roddy Piper slapped JTI, Josh the intern, for asking about his fight with Keith David in They Live. However, this is the same episode where Kristian told a very particular story for the first time. Katie Sackhoff, the standout performer on Battlestar Galactica, a consensus top 10 TV show of all time, defended the subject of the story while Marc followed suit. So why am I bringing this up? Well, fast forward 4 years to November 10th, 2016's post-presidential election episode of the Schmoes Know Show, and Kristian just so happened to tell the same story that he first brought up 4 years prior on their very first episode following the last presidential election. So what's the story that Kid Kristian relayed in the two post-presidential election episodes of the Schmoes Know Show in 2012 and 2016? It's none other than the Ballad of the Narcoleptic Film Critic. Kristian mentioned this on this week's show as he told this story in Phase 3, but obviously he wasn't sure when. So the fact that it originated right after our last presidential election is just crazy to me. So that is your Schmoeville history lesson of the week.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. That was the first time. I will talk about it in the live show portion, but that was the first time I'd heard this story this week, and I absolutely loved it. But I want to go back.
You didn't know it was following the last election, though.
Oh, I had no idea. No, certainly did not.
I mean, what are the odds of that, man? That's astronomical.
That is crazy. I guess it's probably the same as the odds that Donald Trump would be elected as our president.
Settle down, settle down. This is a spin-free zone, isn't it?
I'm a liberal in a red state, so it sucks right now. All right, so let's talk about the Schmoedown, starting with the tag match between Team Trek versus Team Superhero News. What's your overall reaction to it? I've got a couple things I want to say, but what do you got?
Scott Mance did everything possible to lose this match for Jason Inman. And Jason Inman was fantastic this episode, despite the fact that Mance kept screwing up and saying the wrong answers for things that even Mance knew, but he just answered too quick. And Mance tried to get cute with the opponent's choice in round 2. He picked Kubrick for Superhero News, and Superhero News handled that category just fine. So his strategy backfired. He should have gone with movie release dates. That way he could have guaranteed himself the steal while making it harder on them. So bad strategy all around from Mance. I'll save my thoughts on the final round once we get to it. But where are you at so far?
I agree. I mean, there were so many missteps throughout the match that I cannot believe the end result. Because it was 18-15 Team Trek, correct?
Yes.
Correct. It blows my mind that the match went the way that it did, and they still got the win. It's so crazy. Is there a chance that this match was recorded forever ago? Because Muga mentioned as they came in, when they were introduced, Mance was carrying Inman on his back, and Muga mentioned that Mance had just had his kidney removed. That happened a long time ago, did it not?
I've heard that reference before, but I can't place it when exactly. But we've talked before, though, how some of these competitors don't know the rules as much as you think they would, especially the newer competitors. And Adam Havlack, or Davey Havoc, whatever the hell his name is, he did not call multiple choice in the first question of round 2 in regards to the best supporting actor for Spartacus. He didn't call multiple choice, and then Trek couldn't steal it, though. So Trek did not capitalize on them not calling multiple choice, but they totally forgot. And then Adam later said in the match, about a couple questions later, that he totally forgot that multiple choice was a thing. So the point is, Superhero News cost themselves at least another point by not using multiple choice sooner.
Yeah. It was a very weird match. I mean, it was certainly entertaining and it was a good match, but you're right. That coupled with the fact that Scott Mance acted like he had never been in a match before, it was just kind of mind-blowing to me. I'm reading my notes here, and it's just note after note that Mance missed so many that I even forgot that there were a couple of missteps from
He missed the one-pointer in regards to Kenneth Branagh, which was kind of a trick question because Mel Gibson had his Hamlet movie in the 90s as well. It wasn't 1996 like Branagh's, but I can see how some people might get switched up. But Mance saying Ethan Hawke, that's just all over the place. Plus, Inman knew the answer. Inman ended up getting 8 points in round 3. So, yeah, he carried Mance all the way, despite Mance picking the strategy to pick Kubrick. And Team Trek, they spun Cameron Diaz, and at least that gave us one of the greatest intros of this show to date, thanks to Josh Muga and his assumption that Clark Wolf loved My Best Friend's Wedding like he does.
Which one's worse, the fact that he assumes that she loves it or the fact that he does love it?
That's a very interesting question. I'm going to think about that and get back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, look, it was a great match, but we have to talk about the last question, because it was the most obscure question, at least for me, in recent memory on the Schmoedown. Yeah, for me, so we give Skalicki a hard time on this podcast. We talk about what we would change about the Schmoedown. I got a message from him this week, and I'm not going to name names. All I'll say is that this question is not Skalicki's fault. But given if you think about it long enough, it actually won't take that long to figure out who would have been responsible for this obscure 80s movie question when you think about who is in charge of the Schmoedown. I will leave it at that. But what was your reaction to that?
I've never even heard of Judgment Night. I've never even heard of it, and I'm a big Emilio Estevez fan. Mighty Ducks, Young Guns, I could go on and on. I love the guy. So the fact that I've never heard of this movie is a problem. And then I thought the question was worded unfairly. What comedian played the villain? Dennis Leary is an accomplished actor. So obviously you would assume, okay, a comedian is in a movie. Obviously he's also an actor. But the fact that they just referred to him as a comedian is awfully misleading because he's been acting for a long time. He does a ton of TV work to this day. Rescue Me and then that sexy rock and roll bullshit that he does now. I don't know why I said that, but he is an actor. You can't just call him a comedian when he's an actor-comedian, an actor/comedian.
It's a great point. So who in that building would think of Dennis Leary as a stand-up comedian before an actor?
Mark Ellis.
All right. Okay.
Mark Ellis.
It's a good guess. I'll leave it at that. That's a great guess. I just love that Skalicki was so quick to defend himself. Like, before you guys talk on Schmoeville, just know it wasn't me this time. We love you, Skalicki, even though we give you a hard time.
But this is my point, though, about Adam remembering multiple choice, because there are certain moments that they cost themselves. And look, to be fair, they didn't know their three-pointer. They didn't know that John Williams scored the Patriot. They guessed Hans Zimmer. So
poor guess.
Very poor guess. They had chances to put the match away, and Inman made him pay.
Now, remind me, since I didn't do great on my notes this week, was there anything after the match that was significant in the post-interviews of this match?
I don't have anything noted, and usually I note that stuff, so I don't think there was anything significant. Otherwise, I would have noted it. So I'm sure the commentators will make us pay either way.
That's fine. That's fine. But this leads into the next match that we got on Friday, because there was a very significant announcement in the post-interview. But first, we got Bibbiani,
the Beast,
versus Andreyko,
the Android.
I'm someone who's guilty of saying that, sometimes these matches don't get me that excited. I want to support these people, but I don't always know what to think going in. I don't have someone that I'm rooting for necessarily.
Mark Fernandez does not want to hear this.
I know. Sorry, Fernandez. I know you're listening. But I actually do know of, or I've seen Mark Andreyko quite a bit on Screen Junkies. So,
as have I. He loves Jurassic World.
Yes, he does. Wait, Dan Murrell. Are you thinking of Dan Murrell, or do they both hate Jurassic World?
No, Mark Andreyko is always bashing Jurassic World on Screen Junkies, it seems like, so I'm just being sarcastic.
Gotcha. Sorry.
He's a comic book writer as well, a famed comic book writer, so he's got some credits to his name.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But did the Beast have the best intro that we've seen so far?
Oh, my God. That was so good. So good. I'm glad, and that's what I was getting to. The fact that I'd started out not really that excited. He made me excited. Oh, my goodness. And this is before, his impressive record-breaking match. I mean, just his interview at the top, his introduction, it just got me so pumped. He was so funny. Sometimes people come out there and do that kind of stuff and it just falls flat and you don't really think it's that great. He showed up. He really knew how to get these fans talking and to get them on his side. And he did it. And he killed it. Even before he started answering questions, he made this Schmoedown absolutely one to remember. So thank you so much, Bibbiani, for doing that.
Just his intro was already 100 times more creative than the outlaw character.
Yes.
Just his intro. So the fact that we got the performance that we got, not a surprise. Not a surprise.
I mean, it was nuts, right? Is this not one of the best? I mean, I know this probably sounds like an obvious statement, but did this just go from an unsuspecting match to one of the greatest of all time? Can you say that?
Absolutely. It's the highest scoring match they've ever had, highest scoring winner, highest scoring loser. This is the next best thing since Roca Harloff.
Yeah, and again, with Andreyko, the fact that I was rooting for him going into the match, I still didn't even know how he would do, right? I mean, I'm just doing it because I've seen him the most online. But other than comic book movies, I don't really know what his strengths are. I don't know how good he is at movie trivia. So it could have gone either way. And the fact that Bibbiani's opponent matched him so well, I mean, I could not have imagined that it would just be this great. I know I'm gushing right now, but sorry.
The Beast made him pay in regards to Labyrinth, though. So that was kind of the one slip-up for Andreyko. But, Kristian called this a perfect game. And I'm hesitant to say perfect game just because the Beast had to use multiple choice to begin round 2 in regards to Steve Rogers' quote about not liking bullies.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like a perfect game has to literally achieve every point possible, including all 2 points in round 2 for a particular question. So the fact that it was only a 1-pointer to begin round 2, I feel like that makes it a no-hitter, not a perfect game.
Yeah.
So maybe people disagree with me there, but I feel like a perfect game has to accomplish or achieve every available point possible.
Right. I mean, I guess it's still worth pointing out that he still did not miss a question. I mean, that's
correct.
That's really, really impressive. So I think that's what Kristian was touching on, but you're absolutely right. There is still another record waiting to be broken. And that's really exciting. But I think if anyone can do it, it'll be Bibbiani himself again. Right. Because he just proved how good he is.
But I just say this because we just got TKO terminology. So
yeah.
I want to make sure they come up with the right terms for a perfect game where you get every point versus having to use a multiple choice in round 2, etc. So I'm sure we'll get those in due time.
It's funny thinking back on it because before the match, his rhetoric about the match was that how surprised he was, because he was just saying, well, I think people are underestimating these two guys. They're really going to show up. And he had this obviously under his belt the whole time, and he knew what he had got before we did.
This is something I wanted to discuss in the pre-tape show segment of this show, but I suppose we can talk about it now.
Okay.
You could tell based on their rhetoric in that pre-tape show for Schmoes that they knew they had a great match coming for us. I mean, they basically guaranteed a great match without guaranteeing it. I mean, they were walking the promotional tightrope very close, but they knew they were about to release a bad boy into the world.
Yeah.
And just the words they were using, they were overstepping a bit more than they normally would because they were so excited about this one.
Definitely. And I'm going to be a freak about this in the near future, and I'm going to write down everything everyone says in that studio about the upcoming Schmoedown matches, and I'm going to read into it way too much and then speculate how wrong I was on this after show. We pretty much.
By the way,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We had an interesting moment to begin round 2. Why don't you tell me about that interesting moment that took us by surprise?
You're right. I sent you a message. I caught the match before you had, and sent you a message that I was thinking about you at the beginning of round 2. So we got a surprise this week again. Well, 2 surprises really, because she appeared on another show. But Emma Fyffe brought out the wheel. So not only does this somewhat hint at the fact that this was recorded probably last Friday, as soon as last Friday, because that's she was in the studio last Thursday, so they could have done it at the end of last week. But at the same time, I think the girl is here to stay. I think that she – and look, I was kind of hesitant to form an opinion on her after the live show. I think she showed up this week that she could hang out with the boys on Collider. But, yeah, I was just surprised because there was no – there was no way that we knew that she was going to be as frequent as she already has been in the past week, right? I mean, what was your reaction to this?
I was very surprised to see Aaron Fife walk out with the wheel. I was surprised to see Perry walk out with the wheel in the tag team match, as she had a jacket on with shoulder pads, mocking Muga in the process. So I'm just glad that someone other than Josh Muga is bringing out the wheel this week, but very surprised when I saw that it was Aaron Fife. They are really trying to make Aaron Fife a thing on this channel, and for some reason, I don't know why we glossed over TV Talk this week, but yeah, she hosted TV Talk in place of Sasha this week. Griffin was late. Perry subbed in his place for 15 minutes. And it seems like, yeah, they want to get an extended look. First, they got to look at her on Schmoes, then obviously the Schmoedown, and now when it comes to TV Talk. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of her too.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to sound like I was negative on it. I thought it was surprising when she came out, but I certainly have no negative thoughts about it. I just found it very curious. But yeah,
I must say, she stopped on Monday's TV Talk. She kind of reduced the So maybe someone talked to her. I don't know, but she did stop the over responding to other people's points as they're talking. So progress.
Yeah. Unlike Rapaport, she was probably able to pick up on what the show's format needed. So
I hope so.
Any final thoughts on the Schmoedown before we get to the next portion?
I do have a final thought, and this was in the post-interview section. Aaron Fife did the post-interviews as well. And Rocha interrupts the Beast's interview, and he asks him to join this 4 horsemen of movie trivia, whatever the heck this is, a 4-person team. And I'm not happy about this because I wanted the Beast to take out the Outlaw. I don't want them teaming up, even if it's for some extended tag team, 14-person thing. I want the Beast to slay the Outlaw. I don't want them being chummy and buddies. I don't want that at all.
I didn't care for it either. Only because I didn't even know what the hell they were talking about. Because as far as I know, is this the very first time that we've been hinted at this in the future? This 4 horsemen thing?
Very first time, which leads me to believe that this must be a continuity gap or continuity error. So maybe something came of this in a previous episode and Rocha was following up on it. So I feel like we might get an episode soon that will provide context as to what this 4 horsemen thing is, because it seems like we picked up in the middle of a storyline that had already started, and we just haven't seen that episode that started the storyline. You know what I mean? Right.
I don't even know how Outlaw Nation could be excited for this. 'Cause how is anyone supposed to know what the hell this means? I mean, we don't know.
It's like the TKO thing. Like
4 on 4.
Remember how we...
Go ahead, sorry.
It's like the TKO thing. Remember how we kind of picked up on TKO after the fact, and then they made the announcement via the press conference. So I feel like we caught this in the middle, and we'll have context coming. So I restated my point again. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I just don't know how you could be excited about it because we have no context. Just trying to piece it together, thinking of 4v4. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I don't know why you would do that. So I think the format needs to be made more clear before I can even get excited about this. But now that you've mentioned your point as well, I can see why you would want Bibbiani to go against Rocha for sure. So yeah, there was just nothing about that. I'm curious, but I'm not excited. So I agree. There's probably an announcement coming in the future about that.
That was misplayed. That was misplayed, but clarity is coming, I'm sure. So, any other thoughts before we get to the mispronunciation of the week?
No, let me just tell you, okay? I love this segment. Many people love this segment, but please,
it's not going anywhere.
Please don't bring up Godot again. Please.
Look, it's not. It's so easy to bring things up when you know you're right. That's all I can say. So when people try to challenge me, I'm going to make it so that they regret ever challenging me. So Kenny learned the hard way. unfortunately. So,
But I'm the
know,
victim. Our listeners are the victim because we have to listen to it.
Well, look, blame Kenny. Kenny knew that I'm over-prepared and I over-researched. He was relying on research from years ago. And look, people need to respect the fact that when I prepare for these segments, I go out of my way. I don't just do a couple Google searches. I'm better at the internet than most people. I don't rely on what Google says at the top. I go beyond Google. I talk to people in the little province where these foreign names come from that we have such trouble with. And this week's example is a perfect example. So this week's mispronunciation of the week is part of the holy trinity of mispronunciations that also includes Gal Gadot and Alejandro G. Iñárritu. This is a director who helmed my favorite film of 2015, and as of right now, he's the man behind my favorite film of 2016.
Wow.
I'm talking about the director of Sicario, Enemy, Prisoners, and Arrival. That's Denis Villeneuve. That's 2 syllables, not 3, as people like Jake Gyllenhaal and Alicia Malone will mistakenly say Villeneuve or Villeneuve. So it's not quite Villeneuve. It's not quite Neuve, like you're saying new with a V. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, in French, the EU forms a sound that is more like a U. In this case, it's an OE sound, which is like an sound. So even though there's no O in Villeneuve, we say it like we would the OE sound. So this is not a sound that we have in English, so it's difficult for us to pronounce it exactly as the French do. My sources include Denis himself, per his New York Times Anatomy of a Scene for Prisoners, my French-Canadian friend Constance, who's from Montreal, just like Denis. She broke it down for me phonetically. And she was really the one who, again, explained that the EU becomes the OE sound in French. So that doesn't make much sense to us, but it makes sense if you know French. And again, when we don't have a sound in English, we're forgiven if we get close to the pronunciation. So if you say Villeneuve or Villeneuve, as long as you're in the ballpark, it's acceptable. So my last source is someone by the name of Learn French with Alexa. She's the biggest YouTuber in regards to learning French. She was very, very helpful. And let me just say this one more time. It's Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve. Say it fast. Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis
Denis
Villeneuve.
Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve. So that is your mispronunciation of the week. And go see Arrival. It's great.
Thank you very much, Brian. That wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. Please, for your sake, do not watch this weekend's movie fights because they destroy that poor man's name several times, and I can see you ripping your hair out. So please avoid that at all.
That's why I do this segment. So it spreads around and people get it right. I'm not doing it to be a pain in the ass or to be a know-it-all. I just want the people that we watch every day to look like professionals. Is that so wrong?
No, it's not.
Snelling, any thoughts on the Imagine That, the George Miller Justice League take, the second installment in the Imagine That series by Schmoes Know?
Not in particular, other than it was so funny because I remember being that guy that back in the day was stalking that IMDb page when that was in existence. Hey, this video, I only knew of the IMDb page because at this time in my life, I wasn't following movie blogs. I didn't really understand that space yet before I discovered Slash Film. So this video was so much fun to watch because I remember the IMDb page, but there was so little information that I actually knew about the project. I think most of the art that was displayed was obviously fan art, but the fact that it's worth discussing because George Miller was set to direct, which at the time meant nothing to me.
Wow.
I'm sorry, I was young. I was like 6 at the time, okay?
Have you seen the other Mad Max films besides Fury Road?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah. So, but anyway, this video was just a lot of fun to watch because, I know the last video was on Tom Cruise being Iron Man, and I had read plenty of that material over the past few years. But this one was just a lot of fun to watch, and I thought the quality was great, the writing was great, and just a fun video. I like that they are doing these, for sure.
Well-made video. The one issue that I had with it is that there wasn't any new information added that I wasn't already aware of. And it's not their fault. There's just only so much information out there before you have to do what Schnepp did and actually spend money and build a documentary to where you can interview people about the subject, people that were involved. So obviously they can't do that for a 5-minute video. So it just limits the things that you're able to learn, but that's where the visuals come into play. That's where the Photoshop fun comes into play, where they put the heads of the actors on Fury Road footage so we can get just a sense visually of what this could have been like. So even though some of these will have more information than others, I thought this one was still entertaining nonetheless.
So we basically had the exact opposite reactions. Is that correct?
Well, again, there's only so much information about a failed movie. You can't just unearth new information that we haven't heard for years now unless the people involved say something. So I follow this closely, as did you. I didn't learn anything new, but at least I got to see a fun pretend visual as to what it could have been, and that's more than you'll find in most articles. So that's kind of the purpose of Imagine That, to get a visual sense of what this could be.
Knowing me, Brian, what was the one thing, and not from this video, back in 2005 or 6, whenever this was in production, pre-production, excuse me, what was the one thing I was probably looking most forward to about that movie? Can you guess?
The one thing you were looking forward to most, besides Armie Hammer as Batman?
No.
Besides DJ Patron as Superman?
No.
The one thing.
You're driving me nuts.
I don't know.
Are you crazy? What is our friendship built on? What did we talk about for so many weeks when we first got to know each other?
Dude, we've been recording now for 3.5 hours, and you can't expect me to think instantly about all these things.
Adam Brody as the Flash.
Ah, of course. My bad. He would have been a fantastic Flash.
He still could be. Are you kidding me?
That's true.
My God. Well,
Ezra's got the role, but he would have been great.
Oh my God, yeah. We need more Adam Brody in our lives, please. And no, I'm not going to watch Crackle
I watched the first episode. It's bad. It's so bad.
All right, let's get to the Schmoes Know Show number 258, Worst Theater Experiences. This was not a live show, but pre-taped, as we previously mentioned, and as was hinted at last week. So I feel like, I don't know, this was sort of an underwhelming show, which is funny because so many times I've been an advocate for maybe additional Schmoes Know shows throughout the week. By the way, I guess I should mention who was actually on the show briefly. Kristian, Ellis, Copster, and Ken on the main table. And then we got more Cody than we've ever gotten in Phase 6.
Cody Cam.
That's right. Which is something I'm not really that familiar with, and you probably are. But we got
to learn about how his facial hair grows. That was very interesting.
I'm a huge advocate for additional Schmoes Know Show content throughout the week. If there's ever a chance that can happen, I will.
Don't forget my prediction. What's my prediction in regards to Ken?
I don't know. Do you want to just say it and get it out of the way real quick?
That he's eventually going to do multiple The News throughout the week since he's at Collider full time.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good call. They could definitely do that.
They just can be standalone videos.
But does that slightly contradict the previous point where, like, since the move to Complex, Schmoes Know Show is supposed to be able to move away from movies because Collider is the headliner? So if Ken did like a news segment, is that too close to what they're doing on the other side?
He could even do it as a co-production with Collider, because his style is so unique. It's a win-win for both channels and for the company. So, however he wants to deliver it, I don't see why they would object to it, just because it's so different from the way Movie Talk delivers news. It's so different from the way Frosty delivers news on the website. It might just be a fun thing to try out. So again, don't take too much stock in this loose prediction, but I just feel like with Kenneth Collider full-time, he'll do the news more than just the once per week in the live show segment.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not at all discounting. Like, Ken, by all means, should have his thing at Collider. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of his, so I would not have a problem with him doing something like that. I just don't know.
My point is, it's more entertainment than the usual news. That's why they wouldn't be opposed to it, because it's so different from an entertainment standpoint that it's unique enough from how they deliver news otherwise.
Right.
There you go.
The reason why I think this show was so underwhelming, I know why they did the pre-tape show. Not specifically, because I guess we'll find out on Monday what was the cause of it. But that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. But I think the reason why it was so underwhelming is because the previous weeks recently have been so on point. And there's been so much energy to it that this kind of just... It wasn't my favorite episode. Am I alone in that, or do you agree?
Look, compared to the live show, Behemoth, 2 hours, alcohol, full cast, of course it's not going to be the same. I'm just grateful that we got something. I'm not going to be one of those ungrateful fans and wishes that it was 2 hours. I'm just glad that we got something. We have something to talk about. Was it underwhelming? Maybe, but I'm just happy that we got something nonetheless. So we do know why that they had to. We do know why they had to pre-tape the show this week. I mean, we can look at the photos that are online. We understand the reasoning. It's just not our place to relay that on the show.
I haven't seen the photos, though.
You've seen the photos on Twitter and Instagram.
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, I know why they had to pre-tape the show this week, but that's beside the point. Let me ask you, Snelling, spiders or snakes, which one do you fear most?
Snakes. There's so much. They're so much harder to get rid of. You just squash the spider, but you have to maneuver around a snake. They're crazy fast, and it's a much bigger threat. Spiders are nothing. They're nothing.
Yeah, actually, going back to your previous point about underwhelming, I did think that the worst theater experience discussion was underwhelming. If you want to look at the topic of the actual episode, I feel like they barely scratched the surface of their worst movie theater experiences. And Kristian has told that fizzy, clearly Canadian story a million times, so I'm guessing he didn't want to repeat it. Yeah. But I feel like they didn't really grasp that subject all that much.
Well, it could go both ways. So they could have dive deep into that, but at the same time, that title for the show, Worst Theater Experiences, that is a consistent Twitter question on Movie Talk. Like that idea for the Schmoes Know Show is barely any bigger than a Twitter question that's been asked a million times. We've heard so many stories from them over the years on Movie Talk that no matter what they said, it wasn't really going to be new. And I guess I'm kind of contradicting myself because I said before how I hadn't heard the story of the narcoleptic critic, which I very much loved. But other than that, we've sort of heard the worst theater experiences. Well, maybe I might get shit for that in the comments because maybe I haven't heard them necessarily from Copster or Ken, but maybe that was just part of why this episode didn't excite me as much.
Maybe they should have gone with a different title. I don't know. But all I do know is I have my worst movie theater experience that I think is going to blow theirs out of the water for this specific episode. But before I get to that, I want to say how disappointed I am that my Twitter question for this show was ignored despite having the most likes on Twitter underneath their Twitter question, asking for questions.
What was it? I didn't know you did it.
I asked them to rank Denis Villeneuve's last 4 films, Sicario, Prisoners, Enemy, and Arrival, and rank them in terms of their favorites. Just the 4 of them. And despite having the most likes on Twitter, Cobster ignored it, and my feelings are greatly hurt.
Maybe you should call into the Wanger show this week.
So they posted that tweet live as they were recording on, Saturday?
Yep, you might have missed it.
I'll be on the lookout then.
Maybe next week.
Oh, wait, today is Saturday. Damn it.
Yep, you just
I'm all mixed up.
all these different dates where we record versus when we publish. It's so confusing.
Imagine how the Schmoedown feels.
Did we announce our four-way Schmoeville podcast, by the way, the Four Horsemen of the Schmoeville After Show? Have we done that, or is that for next week?
We should just come into it as if we've already been talking about it, Snelling.
Oh, yeah.
We gotta act like it was already a thing that people know about, and that way we name our third member before we explain that there were already two members.
Gotcha. Sorry. Anyway, I can't believe I took the lid off that. All right.
Blew it.
Yeah, I blew it. Okay. Yeah, as far as the show goes, I don't have a lot to say other than the show was fine. It was funny. I liked seeing Cobster and Ken on the main show. I loved them giving Cody shit. I love Cody. I think we have built a great bond over the past couple of weeks. But yeah, man, the fact that they do an hour show pre-taped is a great decision. I'm not saying that this was horrible, because it's definitely not. And you're right. There's no reason why I should have to complain about this, but it
shows they care about their fans.
Yes.
Who rely on this outlet every
Absolutely.
week for some fun, for a escape from their own lives. That's what that shows respect for their audience.
And they know it's not the same, like we said. They know it's not the same as the live show. That's why they cut it down to half the time. It makes absolute sense, for sure. But other than that, that's pretty much my broad reaction to the episode.
So do you want to hear my worst movie theater experience since they failed to come up with one?
Sure, go ahead.
This is heavy, so buckle up.
I'm buckled.
So Batman v Superman opens up on Thursday this past March. I was already booked to go see it with some friends that Saturday, but last minute I couldn't resist the urge of going on Thursday night. So much so that I was willing to go by myself, since reserved seating makes this scenario far more tolerable. And for you youngsters out there, I refused to go to movies by myself until about 2 years ago. But there will come a time where you will actually enjoy doing it, especially since your friends won't be able to go without a babysitter booked 4 weeks in advance. Anyway, I bought my ticket as I often do. I chose a seat that was second from the aisle. That way people avoid buying the surrounding seats around me, since tickets to go to these nice theaters in Newport Beach, they're expensive. They're about $20. So
God.
some people think it's bad form for me to buy the seat that is second from the aisle, but when you pay that kind of price, you don't want to be distracted by the guy next to you for whatever reason. So I arrived at the perfect time within minutes of the movie starting, and I went straight for my seat. What's the first thing I see? Some guy was sitting in my seat. So I told the guy who was in his late 20s, I'd say, that he was in my seat. He basically knew this was coming, as he had a story prepared, and he said, there weren't two seats together. I came with my friend. We want to sit together. So he offered me my seat or the aisle. But since the opening credits were starting, I just said whatever and took the aisle seat. So right away, I noticed 4 items on Seat Taker's food tray, as every seat in this theater not only reclines but has an individual food tray. Those 4 items were his cell phone, an empty water bottle, a full water bottle, and a big bag of Starburst. So I turned my attention to the movie, but every couple of minutes, Seat Taker starts checking his phone on his food tray. He had the phone pointed down, so he'd have to lift it up to see if he got a text or something. The thing was, he wasn't getting any texts. He just couldn't resist the urge to check his phone. And you might be thinking that he probably turned down the brightness, but that wasn't the case. It was full brightness. So every couple minutes he'd do this like clockwork. And he'd do it carefully, as if he knew that he wasn't supposed to be doing it. But he continued to do it because, that's just what he was doing. So I tried to block it out. I tried to block it out while Jesse Eisenberg is feeding Jolly Ranchers to old guys. However, this entire time, I'm smelling something that I hadn't smelled since high school.
Oh.
And it was confirmed by the fact that he kept spitting into the empty water bottle on his food tray.
Oh.
So on top of checking his cell phone every 2 minutes, despite not being texted, he's also chewing tobacco and spitting into an empty cup as part of his routine. So I continue to block it out as best I can. Eventually, he spits his dip out and opens up his big bag of Starburst. Now, a Starburst is not a quiet candy. You have to unwrap and then you have to chew. So I can hear every wrapper being opened, as well as the sound of him struggling to chew each Starburst. Keep in mind, he's still checking his phone routinely every 2 minutes or less. So the movie continues on, and we're about to reach the fight between Batman and Superman. At this point, my anger is just like Bruce Wayne's in the movie. It's escalated. It's been escalating the entire movie.
Yeah.
And because the fight is why we attended the movie, I finally said to the guy, "Hey man, I've done my best to ignore this, but would you mind putting your phone away? It's really distracting." I was super calm and polite about it, but his response was, "What the fuck did you just say to me?" And he said this in a southern accent, a la Snelling, a la you.
Thank you.
So clearly he wasn't from Newport Beach. And the chewing tobacco should have been my first clue, since it's not really a big thing here. No offense to the people that love it and where it's a big thing, but
It's a big thing here.
I replied to him, I asked politely if you could put your phone away. It's against theater rules to have it out given the bright light that it shines. He replied, "What? You're telling me that I can't look at my phone? It's on silent. I'm allowed to look at it." Then I replied, "Actually, that's just not true." Again, I'm being super calm throughout this. I'm not giving him any anger to latch onto. And I think that just made him even more mad. But then he replied, "I've got a wife and daughter at home. What if something goes wrong?" I said, "Well, put it on vibrate and put it in your pocket. And that way you can feel it in case they contact you. I've watched you check your phone this entire movie without receiving a single message." Again, I'm saying this calmly, and that just made him angrier. Then he said, "Fuck you. Sometimes you just say shit to the wrong person, and you just said shit to the wrong person." So I said, "Okay, man, just text away then. You've already ruined this movie for me, but thanks for the free pass that I'll get later." So I turned my attention back to the movie as the fight between Batman and Superman is already well underway at this point. I'm fighting with this guy while the fight is taking place. However, the seat taker starts hyperventilating and punching himself in the face and his palms while I'm sitting there watching the movie.
God. Oh, what a twist.
He didn't make a move on me yet, but at least he stopped looking at his phone, finally.
God.
Regardless, I was barely paying attention to the rest of the movie. I was preparing myself in case the guy tried to fight me after the movie was over. I was going to make sure that I remained in the lobby so that it was all caught on camera and that it all took place on theater premises. Needless to say, the rest of the movie was the most tense movie-going experience I've ever had.
God.
And it was impacted by the fact that the movie had reached its boiling point between the two characters while I'm having my own showdown in the crowd. The score made my confrontation even more dramatic than the one in the movie, you could say. So fast forward, the movie ends. I walk out and I head to the lobby, and I just stood there until the guy came out. Eventually he came out and he looked at me, he sized me up, only to walk away. I was shocked. It turned out I was twice his size, and if you knew what I looked like, you'd probably think twice about fighting me, even though I'm not a fighter by any means. But to top it all off, he was wearing flip-flops, so I had an advantage right there alone.
Oh, was it Muga?
Basically. So he was basically one of those short guys with a Napoleon complex. These guys, they get in fights everywhere they go. I knew one in high school as well as college. I'm sure everybody has one of those Napoleons in their group, the short guy always getting in trouble. But the night ended all right as I went to the manager and I explained the situation. She gave me 2 RPX passes, the best theater in the area, as a way to make up for this wasted experience. So that was my Brian v. Redneck at Batman v. Superman story.
Yeah, I went to see Inside Out, and there were a couple of girls that talked and laughed the whole time.
Man, that is a really worst theater experience, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
That is extreme.
It was very hard. And for that reason, I think Inside Out is one of the more overrated Disney Pixar films. So,
did they punch themselves in the face during the movie?
No, they just stopped eventually.
Were they chewing tobacco?
No. That would be a very Kentucky thing to do, but no, they weren't.
Did they have any contraband on them whatsoever?
I have no idea. I cannot speak to that.
Okay, fair enough.
What I will say, though, to get back on topic for the live show, I'm a little curious, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. I'm wondering why they didn't take the opportunity. Well, okay, no, let me reword this. I know why they didn't, but I'm disappointed they didn't. They should have talked about the election. And because it's extremely significant. It was the hot topic of the week. It is the Schmoes Know Show now, after all. They could have.
What if they recorded Tuesday?
Well, this is speculation because I'm assuming they recorded on Wednesday. No, you're right. If they recorded on Tuesday, then fine. Everything I'm saying is out the door. But just go with me. If they recorded on Wednesday, they might have even mentioned it, though. Didn't they hint at it at the beginning of the show? Briefly?
I can't remember.
I feel like they mentioned it or touched on it. So that's what leads me to believe they recorded on Wednesday. Regardless, just go with me. These guys, I'm not saying they have a pull and they have a voice and they have a platform. And I would have really liked, and maybe it's wrong of me to assume that they were all anti-Trump, because I don't know, but I do follow them all online. And I don't want to go on a huge political tangent, but I wish that they had said something about it because of their platform. And I'm not saying it had to be the entire show, but to just mention it, I think would have done a lot of good. But that's my stance on it. What do you think?
I actually am going to go the other way just because this issue is dividing our entire country. I just think it's best for them to stay in their lane and not divide their audience. They don't want to create chaos amongst their audience by offending some people who are pro-Trump or anti-Trump, and I just think it's something that they should leave well enough alone and just let other people do the talking on their behalf. Let's let this show be our escape from real life. Let's not drag real life into this show and then create more arguments amongst the audience when there already are enough audience arguments about the most insignificant things.
Okay, to build off on that point, because again, that's sort of why I understood why they don't touch politics usually. Like Kristian doesn't touch politics. I think Ellis threw out one tweet about the entire thing this week. I get it, but they wouldn't even have to say names or name names when it came to candidates. If they had just said something about maybe the violence, maybe there wasn't enough of it yet, because there have certainly been some outcry in our nation. So maybe it hadn't really gone in full effect yet. And so again, if that's the case, then that's the case. I understand it, but maybe just like a message to people as far as respecting one another, to stay even if it was a message about staying together through this hard time, like learning to communicate with each other and work together and not be so angry about it. Like just something along the lines. They don't have to name names of the candidates. They don't have to necessarily put their politics into it, but a message to the fans I thought would have been nice and appropriate, and maybe not too far out of their respected boundaries, like you said. So just something, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I understand why you'd feel that way. I mean, who knows? Maybe next week they'll address it, or maybe just provide like a link to a charity or a help number in case anyone's having a tough time right now. Perhaps someone knows of a support line that maybe they're aware of that might help their audience. I don't know. Maybe they'll say, "Hey guys, let's unite together and celebrate things that we can all agree on: our love for film, our love for Schmoes Know." So maybe they'll address it some way, but. In all honesty, I just think it's better to steer clear and stay in their lane versus potentially dividing their audience. And even telling some people, let's just all get along, then you'll have some people chime in, oh, well, I can't believe some people have to be told to behave. Like, even telling people the nicest of messages leads to someone saying something nasty. That's how divided people are right now. So
right.
That's the extent I want to go on this.
Look, it was something I wanted to bring up. I get your point. Absolutely. I'm sure that's where their head is, or that's where their head was if they did record after the election. And look, not everyone cares, too. Like, I'm super passionate about it. I know a couple people that were passionate about this election in Schmoeville. But again, there were probably plenty of people that just go to this place for entertainment purposes to see these personalities. And maybe that was the smart move, but it's just something I wanted to mention because, in my opinion, it was the biggest thing that happened. And unfortunately, I didn't take advantage of the fact that this was my corner, right? This is our corner. Collider's YouTube channel, Schmoes Know YouTube channel. I got so distracted with the election that I didn't get to enjoy it as much. So maybe that was my fault for not getting more involved and escaping more. But that's all I'm saying. And you know what? And you're right. If that's what people want, if what they needed was for Collider to continue as always and Schmoes Know to operate as always, then I get it. Unfortunately I just didn't get to see it that way. But I'm just
Schmoelider's how I escape the
Sure.
real world problems that I have, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. But I understand why you feel this way.
Yeah. But with that said, look, I mean, there are plenty of times where they have gotten, maybe not with the presidential election, but there are times when there are moments when they get political, especially the more opinionated ones like Sasha. Definitely make sure that their voices are heard, and I absolutely appreciate that. And I don't think that is ever out of the boundary. So I guess I'm just talking out. I'm just kind of working out my thoughts on it now, actually.
She is not afraid to give Benedict Cumberbatch a piece of her mind. I'll say that much.
Anyway, that was just a small thought. Do you have anything else on the show before we get out of here?
The last thing, I want to give credit to Ellis when they were talking about Ken's dream of finishing what they started by joining Collider, everybody working together. Credit to Ellis, as that led to a joke about Kristian's lifelong dream of becoming the Predator. So that was followed with a great fan-made clip of Kristian in costume, and then Arnold calling him one ugly mother effer. So great fan-made stuff, great bit by Ellis, and the Predator thing, Ellis will not let it die quite yet.
That was funny, really funny. By the way, I want to let you know that I've been catching up on my 80s movies, by the way. I know that's a little off topic, but I mentioned it here before that I'm catching up for my eventual debut on the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. It is just a matter of time, and Predator is something that I reminded myself of recently this past week. So,
such an amazing movie.
Good. It's definitely not a B movie, as John Roca said on the top 10. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But that's just another great example of how the Schmoes inform our viewing history, because there are several weeks when I watch a movie based on what they recommend or what they talk about. So anyway, I'm ready to end it on that note. If you are, I think that this was a good show, and I'm sorry if I brought it down a little bit because of the disconnect. It was a hard week on me, though. We talked a lot off air. This week it was really hard for me, and it probably will be for a while. But so I'm sorry.
It's been a hard week. It's been a hard week for everybody, even people who got what they wanted. It's been hard for every direction. So
Sorry,
I feel for you.
Sorry if I aired that out too much on the show, and if there was a difference in quality this week. But that's on me. I apologize to anyone for that. But I think
I'd like you to apologize to me.
I apologize to you, Brian, for having to carry me week after week on the Schmoeville after show.
My back hurts. I gotta go take a bath. My back hurts so bad.
I am going to need to get off here and put another chew in.
I want to give a shout out to one of our listeners. He's the meme maestro, Clint Lajeunesse.
Yeah.
As he basically watches Schmo Lighter with his fingers on his Photoshop wand. So send him your regards at Floyd Pinkster.
And I want to give a shout out to my boy Kevin Marks. I don't think I've given him a shout out yet. We talk a lot on Twitter. Thanks for being a great fan, Kevin. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
So, with that being said, where can the people find you online, Brian Davids?
You guys can follow me at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast at Film Schlubs, wherever podcasts are found, or at filmschlubspodcast.com. I talk TV and film, and I interview great people in the business. Find me on this show every week. Make sure to rate and review the Schmoes Know podcast feed in iTunes. It not only helps out our show, but it helps out the Wangers, the Rundown, the Harloff podcast. It helps out the entire channel, so make sure to rate and review in iTunes.
Very good. You can find me on Twitter at WhatUpSnell. I am so excited for all the people that are discovering my new podcast, Sight and Sound, because I am super, super proud of it. You can find that anywhere you can find podcasts. We also put a lot of content on SoundCloud, and now our YouTube channel is killing it. And you can follow us on Twitter at SightSoundPod. My boy Brian Davids will be on very soon to review some movies with me and talk some TV. He doesn't know it yet, but he will. And yes, please rate and review that podcast as well. Now, with that being said, until next week, I'm Ryan Snelling.
And I'm Brian Davids.
Later, Schmoeville.